Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. and today I'm reviewing Army of the Dead Zombicide from Simon. Army of the Dead is a 1 to 6 player game built on the Zombicide framework, and to that end, I'll loosely go over how a Zombicide system tends to work, as well as the differences that this is going to bring to the Zombicide genre, then my general thoughts on the Zombicide genre, and my specific thoughts on this. It's always hard to cover. Do I approach it completely new entirely? Do I approach it only the differences? So I'm going to go for a little bit of a hodgepodge of both. To that end, the general Zombicide structure, the way Zombicide tends to work, is it's basically going to be a skirmish, dungeon crawler, not skirmish, more dungeon crawler kind of game, in which you're going to control a roster of heroes. You're going to have various heroes over here, you're going to have specific mission objectives, that's going to be in this little mission archives over here, or confidential missions. This, by the way, is a made-up mission on the table. But you can have the specific mission or the scenario you're going on, you have specific things you need to do in order to win, whether it's people you need to kill, whether it's objectives you need to find, whether it's ways you need to escape, whatever those things might be. And you're controlling your heroes who have or your survivors, who have 3 actions each turn to do all the things they need to do to accomplish their mission, survive, and get out. Well, get out would be under accomplishing missions sometimes, not all the time. To that end, each character has 3 actions each turn. The most common actions you're going to have are going to be moving from zone to zone in the game. So moving around from zone to zone is 1 action per zone. You have the opportunity to search within zones inside the building to be able to go through the item deck and gather fun new items that will give your characters new ways to go ahead and attack others in the game, which I'm realizing now my characters don't have any other weapons over here, so we'll go ahead and equip them with some. But you're going to be searching for items, you're going to be moving around from zone to zone, you're going to be rolling dice to be able to attack the enemies in the game, all while trying to take out the horde of enemies that are heading your way. Once all players are done with their actions, which generally you're going to have 6 survivors per mission, sometimes things will be different, but you generally have 6 survivors in a game. Each survivor has 3 actions, so you're going to have 18 actions to go through. Once you're done with all that, the enemies are going to start dealing with you instead. They're going to start by activating. All the enemies are going to try to go ahead and use their actions to be able to attack you and kill you, and then they'll spawn from various spawn points around the board in order to go ahead and, well, generate more enemies for you to deal with while you're trying to accomplish your goals. That's the general structure of a Zombicide game. You're trying to accomplish missions, you're trying to stay alive, you have 3 actions per turn, which is mostly going to involve moving, attacking, and searching, although some other actions as well. Then the enemies activate, taking their actions to try to hurt you. Different enemies will activate in different ways. Then the enemies will spawn, rinse and repeat until the game end is over. Now, there's going to be always differences, other things going on. You're going to have abominations in each Zombicide game. Those are stronger characters who will take more effort to go ahead and kill, and they hurt you more as well. There'll be different zombie types that have more actions, zombie types that deal more damage, zombie types that take more damage to deal, to be killed, and all those things will mix things up. You'll have objectives. Objectives sometimes will let you find new stuff. Objectives sometimes will just give you victory points. There's a whole scaling of experience in the game where as you move up on the experience track, you unlock new abilities. But then also, as you draw a spawn card, the highest level of experience that any of your survivors has is going to affect how many zombies spawn. So you're trying to be mindful of that as well. You're trying to do all this and more, again, in a typical Zombicide game. Now, where Army of the Dead is going to come in, some of the changes or differences is going to bring to the table. And this is not really a fully comprehensive list, but it will give you most of the changes, although it also depends on which Zombicide you are familiar with on your end, if any at all. But some of the specific things here that are going to be different is you're going to have a lack of actual doors in the game. Most Zombicide systems do have some form of actual door you have to open. When you open, things will spawn, or again, depends on the system. In this one, you don't really have doors. You just kind of walk through the various openings. They still affect distances as well as line of sight, movement, things like that, but the doors aren't really as much in your way. You'll have casino hallways, which have their own little rules as far as line of sight. You're going to have these sleepers over here, which are a big deal. Sleepers in the game are tokens that can end up being zombies, depending on a variety of factors. If you cause noise in the zone, you'll flip it over, and boom, suddenly we have 4 zombies spawning in that zone. So those tokens over there can go from a good situation to a very bad situation very, very quickly. When zombies enter a zone with sleepers, as they are over here, you're going to go ahead and spawn more zombies as well. So that's going to be another way. You have to be mindful of the zombies wandering around the board and the sleepers that they're slowly going to engage with. If you leave a zone with sleepers, you're going to roll a die. On a 1, you wake them up. So there's all these different ways that the sleeper tokens will activate depending on, well, what you're doing in the game, but those sleepers represent a new threat of zombies that are in play. You're going to have personal goals in this one over here. You're going to have these personal goals, which every mission you're going to go ahead and draw 2 personal goals from the characters in the game, and you're going to go ahead and have different personal goals as far as different things you have to do in addition to the mission objectives. So over here, for example, you have Dieter must kill 8 Shamblers, and there'll also be objective tokens hidden amongst the game objective tokens that will in some way help, enable, or be necessary in order to accomplish those goals. You're going to have elevators that are going to let you go from one area of the board to another. I don't really have this set up properly right now, but ideally you'd have it on some area of the board or off to the side, and then when you enter that zone, you can go ahead and move to a separate zone where you have the 2nd floor, the 3rd floor, whatever it is you have. So elevators will add another level of different spawn spawn points on the board. You're additionally going to have a new Zeus spawn point in the game. Zeus is going to be the ultimate big bad you're fighting against from the Army of the Dead series, and that spawn point is going to have its own separate deck of spawn cards, which has different things that it does. In addition to spawning various enemies, it also has various activations that is going to bring into play as well. You have ammo weapons over here. So for example, if I grab this weapon, this submachine gun, this one over here is going to be using ammo, which means you're going to roll 4 dice, but you're also going to roll the 2 ammo dice, and you could run out of ammo, thus making the weapon. Let's go ahead, boom. We go ahead and got a bunch of hits over here, so we hit on a 5+, we got 2 hits, but we also ran out of ammo, meaning this card goes face down until we find more ammo in the game. You're going to have the taco truck. I think it's a taco truck if I'm not mistaken. This is going to be a car or vehicle that you can use to wander around the board, which as you move around the board, if you have people in it, it'll both knock over zombies along the way, potentially killing them. You treat the vehicle like a weapon, rolling dice and seeing who you can kill along the way. You're also going to have specialties on the various survivors. Different survivors have different specialties. Sometimes they have abilities on them, and sometimes they just are necessary for certain things to happen in the game. Whether you need to repair something, do something, you might require certain classes. Other times they have abilities, like they have stealthy, where you don't have to roll a die when you leave a zone with the sleepers, and you automatically will not wake them up. And then lastly, or mostly lastly, I'm trying to give a general well, you know what, there's actually 2 more things. We'll have the safe over here. This is going to be an entirely separate safe board, which is going to have a bunch of safe cards over here, which you have to go ahead and deal with these safe cards in order to get into the safe. There's a whole rolling mechanism where you're trying to roll a straight, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, in order to get into the safe. And then different safe cards will have different ways you can manipulate the dice in different ways. That'll have its own little element, won't necessarily show up in every mission, but it'll be present. And then you also have the various walkers over here. Usually in a typical Zombicide structure, you're going to have walkers, runners, and brutes are the 3 classes of basic zombies. Many Zombicides will have more zombies, but those are the 3 basic classes. In this one, it's distilled, so you have the walkers, and then it combines the brutes and the runners into a single class, the alphas, that those are going to, and I think the walkers are called Shamblers, if I'm not mistaken, but you have the runners, who are the alphas, who are a combination of runners and brutes, meaning they move 2 zones or they have 2 activations, but they also take a strength 2 weapon to kill. And that's going to be the basic high-level differences that you're going to cover in this game. There are some other stuff, but those are most of the main differences that you'll be encountering if you are used to a typical Zombicide experience. And to that end, we're going to go ahead and dive into my review of this one. How do I feel about typical Zombicide? How do I feel about the Zombicide structure, infrastructure, gaming system? And then how do I feel about this specific one within that system? The short version, and if you've watched my content a lot, you already know this, is I am a big fan of the Zombicide system. I have not loved all of them, but I have loved some of them, liked others, and then others just thought were good but not necessarily for me. But the general structure or system I find does provide me with very cinematic gameplay, where you are mowing down waves of zombies, you are constantly escalating your powers and abilities, moving up these tracks, adding new abilities that give you different things you can do that break the rules of the game, and I find that upgrade system, with the combination of just taking down hordes of zombies, a very satisfying experience. I find the general arc of a good Zombicide game is going to have you feeling a little bit like you're a little overwhelmed, slowly powering up until eventually you get to a power threshold that you can take others down in the game. Generally, my biggest frustration with games in the Zombicide series has been when I felt they are too easy, when I feel that it's just not a challenge and I'm never actually going to lose or die. And to that end, my favorite Zombicide games have been Zombicide Black Plague, Zombicide Undead or Alive, and Marvel Zombies, all of which I have found are very, very difficult and challenging while giving you room to actually be able to win if you approach the missions properly. Those have been my 3 favorite Zombicide games: the Black Plague system, Undead or Alive, and Marvel Zombies, which I guess also includes Deceased. Other Zombicide games I've enjoyed to various degrees, while having complaints around the difficulty aspect of things. Now that you have that general framework for Zombicide and how I feel about it, let's talk about Army of the Dead, the changes it brings to Zombicide, what I like, don't like, on all of that. Starting off with what I like, which is the sleepers, easily is my favorite new mechanic. These sleepers over here, these tokens that go in various zones, the level of adding additional zombies to the game. Again, if you go back to my personal first Zombicide, you have Black Plague, you kick down the door, zombies appear. That's a fun system to have, and there are ways to mitigate or work with that system to try to open the doors early while you're going to be spawning less zombies, but that means you have more zombies before you're stronger. There's also little difficulty things you can do with that. But this system over here, where you're tiptoeing around the room, not only is it thematic, the idea that you have hordes of zombies, you need to be very careful about the noise you make or where you allow other zombies to wander in their effort to get to you. That's going to result in a lot of tactical strategy, and there's ways to take those out, by the way. You can spend 2 actions when you're in a zone with a melee weapon to just kill the entire token, which means you might be killing 1 zombie, but you also might be killing 4, and so that's a fun little element there of you try to slowly take out their sleepers as much as you possibly can before chaos ensues and they all start waking up and overwhelming you. So I really like the sleeper system. I also really like the personal goal system. This is another nice twist that they have 1 personal goal for every survivor over here, which does mean that depending on the Zombicide game you're playing with, this system could be harder to sustain at larger player counts, larger Zombicide survivor counts and whatnot, but I like the system where you have different goals that give you something different. There's a system and a structure. You always are going to shuffle in 2 of the goals into the private goals you have. Those are going to manifest in terms of the way these objective cards come out, giving you something to do, and then something that will help you within those goals. And I like the system a lot. I think it's a solid system. Both the sleepers and the personal goals, I think, are very solid additions to the Zombicide genre. The fact that you roll dice on the weapons over here, I like that. Again, it's not necessarily, I don't know if I need that, but I like having weapons where you could run out of ammo. It gives a sense of temporariness to using a weapon. It also gives you an incentive or a reason to possibly use a weaker weapon when you could use a strong weapon, because maybe you don't want to hold on to it. And I like the additional level that provides as far as decision making within the game. I like the elevators. The elevators are a little similar to if you played Black Plague. They have this kind of like underground vaults which act as temporary zones between 2 places, or can act as temporary zones between 2 places. And the elevators operate in a similar way, so it's a slight twist on something I've already seen before, but I do like having different zones in the game. I also like the more challenging boots. Having boots in the game that are going to be basically moving 2 zones and take a 2 damage weapon to take out provides a real sense of threat and danger as those things spawn on the board. I also like the Zeus deck over here. Having this separate deck for Zeus over here, where he spawns his own little action and ability on there. That's, again, a nice little twist that can just adjust the game in small ways. But I'd say overall, my favorite things for sure are going to be the personal objectives and the sleepers. Those are the biggest changes that I felt the most and really added to the gameplay experience. I'll also say, because I touched upon this already, that this is hard. You will have different missions of different lengths and different difficulties, and so it's not across the board this is hard, but you definitely will have a sense of challenge, or have missions that will give you a sense of challenge in this one, and I really like that sense of challenge. My favorite thing with Zombicide is when you absolutely can lose, and you do lose. That's easily my favorite thing, and this one, you definitely can win too, but it's definitely one in which if you walk into this one unprepared with what you're dealing with, you will die, and I like that in a Zombicide game. As far as things I don't like, the biggest issue I'm going to have with this one, actually, let's start with my small nitpick first. My small nitpick is that from these various abilities you have on these characters, some of them have an actual impact as far as, the health they have, the stealth they have, what that was not meant to rhyme, but it did, the health or stealth and whatnot. Others are just required roles for missions, which, while essential, means it's a little less fun. Being the character who has to be in the mission for the mission to succeed is less satisfying than, I can walk through the sleepers and not wake things up. I wish all the roles had an ability. Obviously, you have to balance around that, but I do wish all the roles had an actual ability. Past that, the bigger complaint I'm going to have, or the biggest complaint I'm going to have against the system, is that it is a self-contained Zombicide system. I usually end up getting Zombicides with their Kickstarter all-ins, with all the expansions and all the characters and all the survivors, and that gives me a great sense of variety to the game. Now, I will say, this base Zombicide does come with 12 heroes, I believe, which is not a small amount. That means you can have a good combination, mix things up. I mean, more is better, but 12 is a good number. It's not like some of the original core Zombicide sets would come with only 6 survivors. Having 12 over here is a good starting point. Where I think the game is lacking a bit is the abomination variety is the biggest thing that I missed out on, and also the way they actually distilled 2 classes. While the alphas are a nice threat, it basically eliminates 2 different types of zombies into one. So now you literally only have 2 core zombies, and you have 3 or 4 abominations. That is a very limited amount of zombie variety in the game compared to what I typically like out of a Zombicide system. And so the distilled amount of variety in the game, where they not just don't have extras, but they actually distilled 2 classes or 2 types of zombies into one, does mean there's less zombie variety than I typically want out of a Zombicide experience. And then also the survivors and hordes and missions and all the various expansions and things that will add to a Zombicide game simply aren't present here. I don't believe they have plans to augment or add on to this. I think this is meant to be more of a self-contained Zombicide, and it's a very good self-contained Zombicide, but it just means there's more limited growth compared to what I'm used to in this series. As far as what I can see others not liking, first of all, the lack of doors. While I think it adds a degree of simplicity to the game, you might miss the doors and the way those work. Additionally, I'll say the vault is a thematic but random aspect of the game. Like, I really like the vault because, especially if you're familiar with the Army of the Dead movie over on Netflix and whatnot, it's a thematic but slightly just luck. Roll dice, and then if you have the character you need. So sure, there's mitigation, there's taking actions to roll again, but ultimately you can roll straight on your first Yahtzee-like roll, or you could not, and that will definitely change how the mission goes. I'll also say that the mission does. The game starts you off. If you go through this, like this is mission 6 over here, it's a medium length mission, it's a medium difficulty mission. The very first mission you have in the game is a long mission of hard difficulty, which I like because for me, the ability to lose a Zombicide game is the best thing about it. You can go ahead and check out a film gameplay over on our channel if you want to see more there. But the fact that it starts you off that way, depending on who you are, especially if you're someone who's not a big gamer, if you may not be watching this video, depending on who you are, but you may have watched Netflix, you saw this in a store, and you're like, ooh, that sounds fun. And then you get completely stomped in that first mission, that might not be the best Zombicide experience. For me, it's actually a good one. For you, it might be a little less so. As far as final thoughts on Zombicide Army of the Dead, or Army of the Dead, a Zombicide game, I really like what they've done with this game. I was worried that as a mass market title, or to be more specific, guys, as a title that's based off of a Netflix series and possibly has more mass market appeal, I was worried that they would dumb this one down a bit and make it a little too easy, a little too accessible, which could be good for some people, but it'll just make it not right for me. I didn't have to worry. They kept it hard and they added new things. They actually added new elements to the Zombicide system that are good additions to the game. I really like the sleepers and I really like the personal goals. These are nice changes to the Zombicide system that give me a reason to continue playing through this. And so they really did a great job as far as what this game is trying to be and how to make it stand out within a system that has way too many Zombicides. The area that's going to hold it back the most for me is that lack of variety. It means that I do look at this as either something I just finish and move on with, or alternatively something I keep when we don't want to dive into a million boxes and we just want a simple, clean Zombicide experience with just one self-contained box that has a merit too. For me, ultimately, this is a 4.5 out of 5. I really like it. It doesn't hit the 5s that my favorite Zombicides have gotten, but it still has a lot of good things within a good Zombicide experience. A 4.5 out of 5. If you're looking for other recommendations, I'll just basically talk about the Zombicide series. My favorite Zombicide game that I'll recommend that has the biggest changes from the Zombicide core structure will be Marvel Zombies. An excellent game system, can be brutally difficult, but also has missions that you can go ahead and tackle. But Marvel Zombies I definitely recommend. And if you're looking for something that's just going to be a hard, punishing Zombicide game, Zombicide Undead or Alive is one of the most challenging Zombicides I've played, and I love it for that. In any case, and until next time, I'm Alex Radical from Board Game Co. I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, I hope you have a good one.